What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm joined by two of the greats in this industry, Jurg and Dame. Fellas, how are we this week?
Doing good as always. It's just a smile is on my face every single time. It's time to record. I love recording with you guys, and we're always talking about the best of the week, and we're gonna continue that this week. And I'm just excited to be here.
I'm doing good. Nothing new. Got another basketball game today, so excited for that. But other than that,
All right. How was basketball last week, Dame? It was your first game back, right?
yes, we won our first game.
Ah,
My first game back.
you gonna stick with that narrative? Dame's a winner. He leads to wins. They were what 0-2 or 0-3 before you
One
played.
three.
Hmm.
Hey, this is a divisional champion from high school we're talking about here. Like he
Oh,
he
please
knows.
don't. Please don't start that. Okay. Well, Dame leads to wins. He's got a narrative to run with. But we can't talk about I guess Dame's sports activities. We are here to talk about the NFL as we continue our series of talking about, discussing, analyzing, dissecting the divisions of football. We did the AFC and NFC North. We did the AFC and NFC South. This week we will continue by analyzing the NFC and AFC East. That's right. We will be talking about each team in the divisions, expectations, ceilings, what can we expect, all that jazz, the whole 9 yards. So, yeah, nothing much this week besides that. I don't know what else we have. There's no NBA news. That shit's been a the NBA has been a very dry Sahara Desert phase.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant is just being a bitch here and there. But other than that, nothing else going on. NHL, I assume, is the same, Jerg.
Yeah, it's like we're waiting for the last couple names to be signed. The biggest one being Nazem Kadri. Like there have been rumors that he has actually like agreed to a deal with a team, but they're trying to clear like cap space and waiting to make it official. So um there's that. There's like I think the biggest news we're gonna see is like injuries come up. Like in just the last couple days, Max Pacioretty torn Achilles. He's going to be out for the first like 6-7 months. For the Hurricanes. Robin Lehner, it just got announced that he's going to miss the entirety of this next season. So it looks like the Vegas Golden Knights, the Brooklyn Nets of the NHL, for the comparison there, Chris. It looks like they're going to have a rough go about it, which no one is going to feel any kinds of bad for them for. So, like, I think it's just going to be little bits and pieces of news that I think will be better suited and served to the people for the eventual NHL season preview stuff. That when the time comes for those portions of episodes, it'll be all straight ice hockey, on the show. But other than that, nothing really like to go into grand detail about.
Okay. All right. And we talked about MLB last week. So it's going to be a very NFL dominated week this week. Yeah. Talk about the teams in each division of the AFC and NFC East. Again, what we think about each team going into this season, expectations for them, pros, cons, surprises, dark horses, all that stuff. So yeah, let's get started. I think should we start off with what do you guys want to start with, the NFC or the AFC East?
Let's go NFC East this week.
Okay. All right. Well, fellas, I would say this is a pretty weak division. Pretty weak division. And I know we all have Giants fans in our friends group, but facts over feelings this week, fellas. Facts over feelings. So, I say it's kind of a toss up because, by the way, if you guys are new to the series, we kind of go the way we go in order is kind of like how we predict the division will go in terms of who's going to finish last and who's going to finish first. So if we talk about this team first, this means that we think they're going to be last in the division. So, guys, it's kind of a toss up between the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. I'm going to let democracy rules win over here. So, who are we going with, Giants or Commanders?
To talk first, it's the Giants.
Dame?
I'd have the Giants last place as well.
Okay. All right, so we're going with the Giants. I was leaning towards Giants too, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay, Giants. I would say they had a pretty good draft. They had two, I believe, top 10 picks this year. They drafted Evan Neal, beef up that offensive line finally, and they draft Kayvon Thibodeau. They get their pass rusher. I'm hearing both of them are having phenomenal camps. Um, They hired Brian Daboll, so that's automatically a plus, a huge improvement in head coaching. And guys, I would say this is Daniel Jones' last chance to prove himself, to to have a job as a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'm not sure any other like notable moves this offseason for the Giants. I don't believe so, right?
I mean, I think the main thing to note about this team is they're in the interesting spot, Chris, and we've talked about this with other teams in other sports as well, where they have a lot of salary tied to players, but they're not a good team. They had to make quite a few cuts, if I'm not mistaken, this past offseason. James Bradbury being
Yeah.
like the main one. Uh, I think they still have Sterling Shepard, but it was a conversation for a long while in the offseason if they were going to cut him or not. So there's a little bit of roster turnover on this team.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Health wise, look, the Giants always get wrecked, right? But I guess they're gonna have Saquon back. Who did they sign last year at the wide receiver position? Kenny Galladay. Kenny Galladay will be back.
Oh,
But yeah, big oof. So they're not enticing offensive options, but I think if they remain healthy, Daniel Jones would look somewhat decent at least. Now I think that's the thing. Like it's Daniel Jones at the end of the day, and we like cut his ass. But to his defense, to his slightest defense, the injury bug has caught up on the Giants, and he hasn't had that many weapons to work with that much. I don't want to defend him, but I just got to be fair here. But yeah, but you can't guarantee health here. However, that being said, I don't know. I can't see the Giants going far this season, man. I do like they started a good foundation with the draft this year. And I think they nailed it. It was like an A draft for me because they filled in a lot of positions and they got like uh, arguably the best players in those positions. So kudos to them in that department, but it's just going to be a pretty tough year again. But I do like Brian Dayball though. I think they're trending in the right direction. But it's just gonna take a bit, and I think again this is gonna be Daniel Jones's last chance. I don't see him coming back. They're gonna be looking for a quarterback in the next draft. But Jerry, let me start off with you. What do you think of the Giants going into the season?
man, like the Giants are like the first ever team I've ever seen football wise where it's like, you like when it comes to their wide receiving core, I'm almost like you want like, oh, it's like if the wide receivers were healthy, if this or that. It's like for me, it's almost like I kind of don't care about the wide receivers being healthy because they were just so bad last season. Like Kadarius Toney was nothing his rookie campaign. Let's call a spade a spade. He didn't perform, and then he had the audacity to want to try to get traded from this team. Like, I'm sorry, you're a rookie. Like, you have no say, you have no right. Play better and have a cachet. If you're gonna try to act like Antonio Brown, have some goddamn production, kid. So you have that. Uh, Ken,
Oof.
Kenny Galladay, who had 0 touchdowns last season, which was not good to say the very least. Um, like Sterling Shepard is a good veteran. Darius Slayton, I like the two of them. I hope they get used to the best of their abilities because those are two like really good, likable wide receivers on this team. Um, but really, when it comes to the Giants, like yeah, offensively, you're hoping that Brian Dayball he can help do what was done for Josh Allen in Buffalo, and just improve what Daniel Jones has. Now, with saying that, I think this has been a mistake that a lot of people have made in the past is that like you're not going to get a Josh Allen type leap from Daniel Jones. I don't think that's in the cards. But what you're going to get is at least improvement from the guy. And in term like look at Josh Allen from year 1 to year 2 and year 2 to year 3. Like the mechanical improvements, the accuracy improvements, reading stuff better, using his talent more effectively. Like that's what Buffalo improved on year after year with Josh Allen. You need to do that here. It's tough because it is his last year. That's why part of me thinks if he plays good enough, then I would I would assume that they would give him like a mini extension, nothing big, but like uh, a 2 year deal in order to prove himself because like the thing is, and this is I kind of equate this maybe to the Miami situation, the fact that now with Tua in this new scenario, you're only giving him 1 year to get good. So it's kind of like a rough situation for Daniel Jones. And to that extent, I do feel bad for him. But at the end of the day, it's like the Giants have kind of done this to themselves. Like, and it was because of Dave Gettleman and Like them allowing him to make decisions in this slate of time, which, let's be honest, like he probably should have been fired year 1 or year 2. um, but they didn't have the foresight. They kept letting him make decisions. And when Daniel Jones was drafted 6 overall, that should have been the time to get the heck out of there. But you have that's all you can hope for. I think Brian Daboll is a very good offensive coach, and if anyone can get the best out of Daniel Jones, I think it would be him, because he at least has a quarterback that he's worked with recently, and I value that more than like a guy's history. Like long term, like when the Cowboys hired Mark McCarthy, they're like, "Oh, he's worked with Joe Montana and Aaron Rodgers." It's like he didn't do jack anything for them. Like, give me a coach that's done something for a quarterback. Brian Daboll has done something for a quarterback. So that's the faith that you can have if you are the Giants. I will say, at least defensively, they have a couple pieces there. You mentioned Kayvon, who they drafted, Chris. You have Leonard Williams there, the veteran. You have a couple guys along the defensive line as a whole. I do like Dexter Lawrence. I hope he has like a good season for them. Still, yeah, you look at the linebacking core; it's a little bit young, but you have a guy like a Tay Crowder there, who's a young piece that you can hope performs well. Also, just back to pass rushing, Azeez Ojulari, who had a pretty good rookie season, really. And then a defensive back crew, like going back to last season, it was very good on paper. Now, they did lose a couple pieces, like we mentioned, James Bradbury. And they also lost, his name is escaping me at the moment, but the defensive back that they had traded for in the Odell Beckham Jr. trade that they got from the Browns, they allowed him to go as well. But you still have Julian Love, you still have Xavier McKinney, you still have Adoree Jackson. Like, the Giants defense actually has some talent there. And if you are going to win any games this season, it's going to be based off of the defense just overperforming. And there I can only see that happening so many times before like they just break, because the offense just doesn't do them any favors this season. So sorry, Giants fans. It's not like, but I mean, I will say this: compared to some of the other teams, bad teams we talked about, they're not a 3-win team. Like they'll be worse in the division, but they'll be like a 6-7 win team. Like they shouldn't be a 3-win squad. I don't see that.
No, speak for yourself, because I'm not that high on the Giants. But let's start off with what I liked what they did this offseason. Like both of you guys mentioned Brian Dable. I think that was the best thing they did all offseason. That was the guy I wanted to just sign 2 years ago, and I regret they didn't. Like Robert Saleh is great. Like he is what he is, but I don't think he's a coach that can take him to the next level. He's not an offensive minded head coach like Brian Dable is, and I think whether it's Daniel Jones or more than likely it's going to be a quarterback from next year's draft class, I think Brian Dable is going to do amazing things with that quarterback going forward, and should bring out the best of them. And he's going to do great things for the offense as well. And obviously they brought in a GM from the Bills as well. So just having that connection with the coach and the general manager is extremely important, and that's something I really like that they did. The second thing I like they did was drafting Kayvon Thibodeau. I think he was the best player in the draft. We went over this during our draft episodes and stuff. I think he's an absolute monster, and I think he's going to be the defensive rookie of the year. If it's not Sauce Gardner, no bias there, but
Nice.
I love that they drafted him there, even though maybe it wasn't as much of a need as other positions. So just those are only two things I really like what they did this offseason. Other than that, when I look at this team, there really isn't anything I like about them. I don't like their quarterback. Obviously, Daniel Jones, I don't think is that guy. Of course, I have Saquon Barkley in the backfield, but I just don't like that he's never healthy. And even when he was healthy, it was just like I didn't like his style of running, where it's just mostly, if it's not an 80-yard run, he's losing yards mostly every play. So it's kind of a boomer bust with him. So I don't like that. Obviously, a wide receiver group I absolutely hate. I think they're one of the worst in the league, starting with Kenny Galladay, Shepard. They drafted Wan'Dale Robinson. I just don't like their wide receiver group at all. I don't think they have a lot of variety there. I don't think they have a lot of explosiveness there. And I don't think most of the receivers can stay healthy either. So that's definitely not something I like. I don't even know who their tight ends are, to be honest, at this point. I know they lost Evan Ingram to, I think, the Jags. Although Giants fans weren't too happy with Evan Ingram as a tight end for them, he was still something. And now I can't even name you who their tight end is. But when it comes to the defense, I guess that's maybe when you can make a case for something that you like. Like I mentioned, they drafted Kayvon Thibodeau, and having him come off the edge with Ojulari that they drafted last year. Having those two is a pretty good combination to have coming off the edge. But other than that, I don't like their secondary at all. Obviously, they had to cut James Bradbury because of their cap situation, which, just to mention, like, it does not make sense to me why they have such a shitty cap situation when they're such a bad team. It does not make sense. And their safety situation isn't good. Obviously, their corner situation. I know they have Adoree Jackson and forgot the other guys. Logan Ryan, I think maybe. Not Logan. I don't know who
No,
it is, but
he left during the offseason.
he left.
I don't think there's a definitive.
It's just Adoree Jackson.
Yeah, I don't think they have a definitive cornerback number 2. I think corner number 2 is wide open on this team.
Yeah, so even then, you just goes to my point where I just don't like any position group on the team outside of maybe the edge rushers because of Kayvon Thibodeau and what I think he's gonna do this season. So just overall, looking at this team, there's nothing I like, and it just starts with the quarterback and moves its way all around the field. Which is why I don't think they're gonna have more than 5 wins. I think 5 wins is like their max because I just don't like this team at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think if you give truth serum to Giants fans, they would agree. They would wholeheartedly agree. All right, let's move on over to the Washington Commanders. Not high expectations for them on my end. They traded for Carson Wentz, so that'll be their quarterback. Any team that has Carson Wentz as their starting quarterback, already a negative, already a red flag. They re-signed Terry McLaurin. Look, they have some decent weapons on their team. Like we talked about, they re-signed Terry McLaurin. They have Curtis Samuel, J.D. McKissick, Antonio Gibson, a personal favorite of Dame's. Is Chase Young gonna be back? Like, let's go with him. Is he
I
gonna be
think
back to start the season?
I think he should be. I didn't see anything saying he would miss
I
the
read a
start.
report that his ACL injury is worse than they expected, and he's probably gonna miss a couple games to start the year.
Ooh.
Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, I don't have much to say about them. Like, I like some of their weapons, but then again, like when your quarterback is Carson Wentz, you know, it's not things aren't looking up that much, and obviously we talked about like the defense takes a hit, so I don't know. This is a very meh year for the Commanders. I'm not sure. Dame, let me start with you. What do you think about the oh wow. What do you think about the Commanders going into the season?
That was a close one,
Close
Chris.
one, close one.
So we all my friend group knows that I support Carson Wentz more than others.
You're disgusting, dog.
Although I'm not too high on him as I used to be. But I still think he's an improvement over what they had last year. And obviously, like you mentioned, they have pretty good weapons around him. From Terry McLaurin, they drafted Dotson in the first round. You have Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick. They drafted Brian Robinson out of Alabama. So you have 3 solid running backs there in the backfield. You have a number 1 receiver on the outside that he just re-signed, so it's not like he's going to be out of camp and not getting in sync with Carson Wentz. Or he's not going to be unhappy. Of Dotson, obviously, like I said, Curtis Samuel is a playmaker that you could put in the backfield or on the outside or in the slot. He's very explosive as well. And then tight end Logan Thomas, I think, is extremely underrated. So that offense has the capability of being a pretty decent offense that could score points if their defense gives up a little bit, which obviously 2 years ago, Washington's defense was highly praised and they were one of the best in the league. And they really took a step back last year. No idea what happened. I know Chase Young got hurt, but even without Chase, like this defense should have been a lot better than they were. They were one of the worst in the league for most of the year. I assume that they're gonna go back to something closer to what they were 2 years ago instead of last year. So I think they're gonna be much improved there as well. And I just think this team, although I don't think they're gonna be bad, but I just don't think they're gonna be good as either. They're probably gonna be around a 500 team, like 8-9, 9-8, something like that. And it's mostly just gonna come out of Carson Wentz if he can make plays. He's obviously not the guy he used to be on the Eagles, where he had a MVP kind of season before his ACL injury. But he's not as bad as most people think, and I think as long as he game manages and kind of limits the turnovers, and he's not gonna lose them a lot of games. He's just not gonna win them a lot of games either.
Yeah, it's Washington to me is interesting. For the I'm just my thoughts on this team are interesting because on a different podcast, I've picked them to finish better than most probably would in part of the gimmick. But I'm the more I look at this roster and rediscovering the Chase Young news, I'm like, ooh, that was not a good pick by me. I think third is probably the best case scenario now that I really could look at it for this team in the division. Now, there are, unlike the Giants, obviously, there are pieces on this team and position groups on this team that you could really attach yourself to. I think the offensive skill position group here, it's really going to be a telltale sign of if this is the end of Carson Wentz's career with this team. Because Chris mentioned off the top, you have Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic being a very good like 1-2 punch as your running back core. Then you have a wide receiving core that I think is kind of underrated to a lot of people. You have a great deep threat to me in Diami Brown, who they drafted last season, who I think is going to be I think year 2 now with this team, and hopefully a better quarterback will be good. I think you have the kid they just drafted in the first round, Jahan Dotson, a much maligned and criticized pick, but I think he himself is an extremely talented player, along with a couple decent players on the team that fell out the receiving depth. But you have Curtis Samuel, who's a guy that's really a gadget player that I hope Ron Rivera is able to use him a lot better this year, because I think Curtis Samuel is a very talented skill position player. And then you have the number 1 in Terry McLaurin. And a lot of teams would kill for a number 1 wide receiver, like in their room, and the Washington football team has, you could argue, maybe the best wide receiver in this division now as a whole, like in terms of what he's shown in his career so far, and like I would argue it considering what other teams did to their skill position group this past year. Again, it's debatable, but I think it's up for it. The offensive line, I think, is where the offense is going to suffer. Not even the quarterback, because I think Carson Wentz has enough skill. He's actually, fun fact, he's thrown exactly 7 interceptions in a season 4 times. So, which is just absolutely insane. But I think the offensive line is where they suffer because they lost Brendan Scherf in the offseason. They had to try to do some patchwork with Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell at the guard spots. You hope Sam Cosmi can maybe take a big leap here in year 2 for himself and really be like a bona fide starting tackle, but not a guarantee. And the defense, which was a big reason why last season somebody on this podcast picked them to win the division. I regret that very much. The defense, like we said, is going to miss Chase Young to start. They do have other talents and guys like a Jonathan Allen on that team and Deron Payne, but like you look past that defensive line, which is not going to start the season at full strength. The linebacking core is very like hit or miss. There are a couple names I like, but it's nothing crazy. And then the cornerback situation actually isn't terrible. I do like Kendall Fuller. But then the safety situation, it's decent, but it's not outstanding. And to me, I think when it comes to defensive backs, I think this is part of why Dame had his thoughts on the Giants. If you don't have a proven defensive back room, I think like that leads to a lot of questions about what your team can be. So I have a lot of questions about about this team. I will say special teams is the best spot on this team. Like Trey Way at punter and Joey Sly at kicker. They have some very strong special teams here in Washington. So you'll be good there. You'll be good there, Commanders fans. But aside from that, I just don't see it. I think it's not in the cards. I like Ron Rivera. It's been a good story so far. This is actually, I think, just year 3 for him as head coach, if I'm not mistaken. But like, it's not there. The other teams that we're going to talk about here in a little bit are just way more talented than them. And at the end of the day, sometimes it's just who has the better talent, and I think that's going to be the case in this division.
Just bearish all around on the Commanders. Just bearish. Okay, fellas, I have the Cowboys up next.
Ooh, hot take.
I don't think it is, Jerk. I gotta say, well, let's be frank here. Let's be frank. The Cowboys have had a very meh offseason. Like, what notable offseason moves have they made? Like, look, Gallup is out for a bit, right? How long is Gallup out for? He's out for at least what, like half the season?
I think at least the first 6 weeks or so.
Because he got hurt. He got hurt pretty late, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so CeeDee Lamb is obviously going to be your number 1, but like, what? I don't understand. Like, what did they do this offseason that makes them better than the Eagles, in my opinion? And we're going to talk about the Eagles next, but like, they've stayed put, and honestly, they're besides CeeDee Lamb, I'm not very high on their receiving core. How is Michael Gallup going to be when he comes back? Amari Cooper went to the Browns. Dalton Schultz is there, I believe, still. I know he's their tight end, but like, I mean, you have him as well. But other than that, and Zeke hasn't been the same since like year 2, right? And arguably he peaked after year 1. What happened, Dame?
Nothing.
What did you say?
Since he got fat.
Oh.
Oh my God.
They're just fat shaming this podcast. But yeah, you could make the argument that it was Zeke peak year 1. So I'm sorry. I'm just not high on them. I'm not doing this shit again with the Cowboys, bro. I'm legitimately not doing this shit. We're not gonna be gassing them up. Like, they have the Bucks week 1. That's a probable L. Like, come on now. I don't know who's Dame. I think you're up. Talk to me. What do we think? And be
Well, I
brutally
think
honest.
no,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the Cowboys are going to win the division. My main thing is kind of goes to the Eagles instead of the Cowboys. Like I just don't trust Jalen Hurts in the slightest. I think Dak Prescott's a much better quarterback than him. And I know obviously they lost to Mark Cooper, which did not make sense to me when you're trying to go all into in the Super Bowl and you just paid your quarterback and all that. That didn't make sense to me. But I just read Michael Gallup. There was a shot he was going to play week 1. It looks unlikely now, but he's probably going to be back somewhat in the first 4 weeks of the season. So it's not like they're going to miss him a lot. And even with him, they're probably going to lose to the Bucks anyway. So that regardless then. But I think CeeDee Lamb's going to take a huge leap this season. I think he's going to be one of the top receivers in the league. You still have Dalton Schultz, who's an upcoming tight end who's extremely underrated. He had a great year last year. Um, Obviously, we mentioned Zeke. He hasn't been the same. He's probably going to be a full-time fullback soon with the way he moves. But Tony Pollard, I think, is extremely underrated weapon for them. They could use him out wide. They could line him up as a wide receiver in the slot. They could put him in the backfield. He's extremely explosive. You saw a few times he did get the opportunity last year. He made a lot of their big plays for them, whether it was from the backfield or whether it was Dak throwing him the ball. So they do have the playmakers on this offense to make it work, even without Amari Cooper and with Zeke not being really an option or the same guy he used to be. They have a pretty good offensive line as well. They use their first round pick on an offensive lineman as well. So that's really important because they understand how important that offensive line is to their running game and protecting Dak. Because if Dak doesn't have time, he's not as efficient as he is usually when he does have the time. And their defense, obviously, you have DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons coming off the edge. And I think they're going to use Micah Parsons off the edge a lot more this season because he was extremely elite at it. I think he's becoming one of the best defensive players in the league. Um, Obviously, in the secondary, you have Trayvon Diggs. And other than that, it's kind of rough. But as long as Trayvon Diggs is getting 11 interceptions or 12 interceptions, whatever it was last year, like no matter how many yards he gives up, like that's gonna work because you're gonna give the ball back to your offense, which has a lot of playmakers that can score points. So although a lot of people come at Diggs for giving up a lot of yards and kind of getting beat a lot, I mean that's just the kind of corner he is. He's not a shutdown corner like Jalen Ramsey, who's just not gonna allow the guy to catch the ball. But he's just the kind of guy who's gonna take a lot of risks, and sometimes the risk will pay off, sometimes they won't. But if you're getting 11 interceptions, like clearly it's you're doing something right and you're getting the ball back to your offense. So just overall, I know they didn't make a lot of moves to improve this team, but I still think they have enough on this team to still win the division.
So the thing with the Cowboys, and I'm glad we got like that. That's probably the spiciest Chris is going to be on. There's one more team that Chris is going to have his takes for. So let me not say the spiciest, but like if they're not first, they're second, and that because of the lay of the land of this division, that's obvious with the Cowboys. I kind of lean towards what Dame is talking about because you go comparisons with the Eagles and the Cowboys. So quarterback, you have to give it to the Cowboys. Dak is above Jalen Hurts and is also right now more reliable than him. Running back, I know we have our opinions about Zeke, but even Zeke is better. Who's the best running back on the Eagles that can even compare to that? So, and that doesn't even get into the Tony Pollard discussion.
Well, try to keep it Cowboys related though, Jared.
I know, but just hypothetically, like if I'm going
Copy.
by position, I have to give the slight edge to the Cowboys in a lot of instances. Here are my concerns about the Cowboys. Like you said, Chris, with the loss of Amari Cooper, I think they have a chance here to be able to overcome that, in part because CeeDee Lamb is just an absolute beast. But I think they'll be able to, and I can't believe I'm saying this about a Mike McCarthy offense. Oh, now that I'm about to say this, I really don't want to, but I have to stick with my point. I think they can potentially get a little bit creative with what they can do here. I think, like Dame said with Tony Pollard, he is exceptional out the backfield. I think they're going to have to use him a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually just started lining up in the slot at this point. And they have a couple young receivers that, like, if they give the opportunities to, I think some of these guys might actually surprise us. There's always at least one receiver on most teams that's going to be able to surprise us. A lot of people were hopeful of James Washington, but he got carted off about a week and a half or two ago, and it's not looking great in terms of like if he'll be ready to start the season. I think they have enough on offense to get by, and in this division, I think that's all you need. There's nothing spectacular. We just went through two defenses in the reskins. That's a key there. They're the reskins, the Washington Reskins, and the New York Giants in regards to like we don't like portions of either of those teams. Those are not two teams that the Cowboys have to worry about. And so I think if you don't have to worry about 4 of the 6 divisional games, I think you're set. It's just going to be those two. And let's be real here. It was, I forget which game it was, or maybe it was both of them. It was a blowout last season between these two teams. And did the Eagles do enough to match the Cowboys, or
I was
versus
at that
did the
game live in
Cowboys?
person. The Cowboys spanked them.
Right. And also, like, did the Cowboys lose a lot to close that gap? I think the Cowboys did lose a lot. I don't know if it's enough to suffer. I will say, while the offense has questions, I think if the Cowboys falter this season, it's because of the defense. Because I hate the loss of Randy Gregory for this team. I think that was a really stupid thing that Jerry Jones tried to pull on him that ended up costing them Randy Gregory. Between Demarcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons, yes, it's a good pass rush, and even I think number 3 Dante Fowler being there because he signed with them, it's good. But the linebacking core, they need somebody to step up. Leighton Vander Esch has been non-existent since his rookie season. And they need him to step up. They just recently signed Anthony Barr, but are you going to get like, and what Anthony Barr are you going to get? Are you going to get an Anthony Barr who was one of the better linebackers in the game in his early years? Or are you going to get Anthony Barr the last couple seasons? He played 11 games last year. He played 2 games the year before that. Hasn't been good the last couple seasons. And then the defensive back crew, I get what you're saying, Dame, but look, I just don't like the idea of a boom bust cornerback. And Trevon Diggs, like, yes, he led the league in interceptions last year, but didn't he also lead in 20 plus yard touchdowns given up by a defensive back? Like, I
Yo,
don't
that boy
like
getting
that.
cooked by undrafted players in camp. I don't want to hear it, bro.
I don't like that as my number one corner. I think the biggest mistake the Cowboys have made the last couple of years was not paying Byron Jones. I think that was the biggest mistake they've made the last couple seasons, because I think you've seen what Byron Jones has done in Miami, with next to Xavier Howard. Like, Xavier Howard and him don't get a lot of interceptions because it's hard to decide which side of the field you want to throw to, because those are both two pretty good corners. And I think with Diggs being so boom or bust, I'm not confident in any of the DBs behind him. I think the conversation, Chris, I know you start with the wide receivers. If the Cowboys lose this division, if they don't win this division, it's not because of the offense. I think it's because the defense just completely collapses. Because all 3 levels, I have a lot of questions. And we have questions about the Giants defense at all 3 levels, and we have them last. The fact we're even considering this team to potentially win this division just kind of, I think it lends your point credence, Chris. We talk about them so much, we just put them in the convo. If the Cowboys collapse this season, the defense is where I'm looking at first. And then where I'm looking at next is the whole head coaching position, because Mike McCarthy, you're not long for that job, boy.
That's what I. Well, yeah, I think we should. Yeah, let's finish it off. Let's finish off the Cowboys talk with that. This year could possibly put Mike McCarthy in the hot seat, and a Sean Payton may be looming, maybe. So who knows? I just think the ingredients are there for Mike McCarthy to be like canned on the way out.
If they don't make the NFC Championship game, he's fired.
Well then he's fired.
Like,
Let's be frank. Like,
true.
no, they're not making it. I hate doing this every year with the Cowboys, man. Like I'll believe it when I see it, and I just don't think I'll see it. But who knows? They could prove me wrong. It benefits them that they're in a relatively weak division. So there's that. All right. Well, let's talk about the Eagles then. So, Jurg, you talked about how like the Cowboys didn't lose enough for the gap to widen a bit. I think the Eagles gained enough for the gap to decrease. So I mean, yeah, like the Eagles will go as far as where Jalen Hurts takes them, to be honest. So I mean, I think their biggest move was for trading for AJ Brown. I think they also signed Hassan Reddick. They had a pretty good draft, and they stole Nakobe Dean, who was a personal favorite of ours. We didn't have him dropping that far in the draft, in our mock draft. I think they beefed up that defense very much so, and they signed James Bradbury. You know, they capitalized on the Giants' fuck ups. So I think the the Eagles' defense is going to be a massive strong suit here, and I do think with the addition of AJ Brown, it will take off some pressure off Devontae Smith. So I think you have a good 1-2 combo there. AJ Brown's health is always inconsistent here and there, but I do think this team, like if Jalen Hurts takes a step forward, then I think they're going to be dangerous. I mean, I didn't expect them to make the playoffs last season, and they did. So the fact that I think they got better, yeah, in a weaker NFC, like I don't know. I find their roster way more enticing than the Cowboys roster. That's just me. But again, I think it goes as far as where Jalen Hurts takes him. He's going to be a very enticing figure in fantasy. I'll say that. But Jerk, let me start off with you on this one. Thoughts about the Eagles?
Well, let's be honest with ourselves for a quick second. When we talk about the run that they quote unquote went on to finish off the season, and I assume most people would point to after, week 10 is when they start to really play better. Who'd they beat? They beat the Broncos. Okay, it was Drew Lock or somebody else in that game. Okay, they beat the Saints. All right, that's a decent team, but there was no Jameis. I don't even think Taysom Hill started that game. I think that was one of the Ian Book games. They lost to the Giants 13-7. Then they beat the Jets. Come on now. Then they beat the Washington football team. Come on now. Then they beat the Giants again. Okay, revenge, good for you. Then you beat Washington again, and then you lost that 51-26 game to the Cowboys. And then you lost 31-15 to the Buccaneers in the playoffs, which, let's be real here, that score doesn't indicate that the Eagles were getting trounced. So they're a paper mache playoff team last year. I don't like looking at the 6 and 7 seeds unless they were a double-digit win team, and they're like, but they were a playoff team. I don't give a damn. The Bears in their final season with Mitchell Trubisky, when he was the full-time starter, made the playoffs. That doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Former Nickelodeon MVP right there,
Ugh.
Oh, yeah, and like it means nothing. Like I think the biggest if in this division is not the Cowboys wide receiving core. I think it's people are giving Jalen Hurts a lot, and I mean a lot of faith in the leap that he's going to take. I don't see it. I think he'll play better. I think he'll be a better passer than he was last season. He only had 16 passing touchdowns. That's less than a passing touchdown per game. He needs to play. He needs to do that a bit better. Like you mentioned, I am a big fan of the AJ Brown trade. I was a massive fan of them doing that because it screws over the Titans, and anything that makes the Titans worse, I'm all for. So technically speaking, the Eagles, like, they have my heart here. But AJ Brown, like you said, Chris, he's had some injury issues. Like, he was relatively healthy year one, but we cannot discount the fact that Devontae Smith could get some injury issues here. Jalen Reagor is Jalen Reagor, and JJ Arcega-Whiteside has just not been consistent throughout the early portions of his career. And the tight end spot, I can forget because Dallas Goedert's there, and Dallas Goedert's a pretty good tight end. But then you look at the offensive line, like they're pretty old, man. Like Jason Kelsey is starting to get up there in age. Lane Johnson has had injury issues in the past. Andre Dillard, I like him, but he's had inconsistencies a lot in his career. And what's the interior looking like aside, like on the left and right guard spots of Jason Kelsey? I think whereas my thing with the Cowboys is defense and not the offense, my thing with the Eagles is their offense, actually. And I think a lot of people are going to be surprised if they start performing badly, where they're like, oh, why are they performing so badly on offense? They did this, they did that. Well, there's X, Y, and Z issues here. And it's the offensive line to me. And it's also this running back crew is just not impressive on paper to me. Miles Sanders is a decent running back, but he had a bad year 3 compared to his previous years. He had 0 rushing touchdowns for them, and he was also not much of a receiving target anymore, which he was in his rookie season, but they have vastly underutilized him ever since then. Boston Scott is like, he's decent, but him as your number 2 running back, I'm not jumping for joy there. I just have questions along the offense. Like, yes, and the defense did make some strides, Chris. I'll definitely give you that. I do like all the additions they made, but Nakobe Dean fell for a reason. We're going to have to see that. What role will they find with Jordan Davis here? We're going to have to see that. And the defensive back crew, I can't really say too much about the defensive back crew. Like you said, I'm a James Bradbury guy, and I think the rest of the situation is fine. They actually also got Jaquiski Tart, which I think a lot of people forgot about from the 49ers. So I think at the end of the day, also shout out Jake Elliott, one of the best kickers in the game. Let me get that respect. But at the end of the day, I just have a lot of questions about this Eagles team like I do the Cowboys. And because I can finally do it now, I go position by position here, Chris. I got to give the offense to the Cowboys. And the defense is tough, but I equal out the pass rush. And so I'm left to the linebacking and the defensive back crews. It's kind of, like, even the linebacking core I need to consider even. And just because he had the season, I kind of have to give the defensive back crew to Dallas, even though I don't want to. Like, the way that I try to break it down, I see more going towards Dallas than I do Philly. And that's why I kind of have to disagree with where we have our rankings. I think the Cowboys, between the way we have it, I think the Cowboys are probably going to win the division, but it's not by much. It's going to be separated by a game or two. Like, they're not overwhelming. I don't think they'll go 6-0 in the division this year like they did last season. This is not that same Cowboys team. And they're also not going to blow out the Eagles, I think, by 3+ touchdowns this year. I think those are going to be a lot closer games.
No, just say you're a Cowboys fan, Jerk.
You know I love laughing at the Cowboys. Come on now.
Dame, let's go.
Yeah, so like I mentioned kind of when talking about the Cowboys, like, it just comes down to me not thinking Jalen Hurts is that guy. Great fantasy guy, runs a lot, gets you a lot of garbage time points and stats and stuff. A lot of his
Yo, you
stats
saying you're gonna
in
pick him in fantasy, bro? Are you saying you're gonna pick him in fantasy?
no, no.
No. All right.
But a lot of his stats last year came in garbage time when they were maybe getting blown out or they were up by a lot because I saw it in fantasy. Like I could be playing him, he has 2 points, and then he ends at 20 because he gets a lot of his yards and touchdowns at the end of games in the fourth quarter when the game's kind of out of reach. And although I did like what they did this offseason, like you mentioned, adding A.J. Brown, adding to that defense, obviously Jordan Davis was a huge pickup on that defensive line because we know how important the Eagles' offensive line is to them and their success. Adding Tart in the defensive backfield as well, that's a great addition as well. But it just, at the end of the day, comes down to Jalen Hurts. And I just don't think he's that great of a passer. I think he's a better runner than he's a passer. And I just don't think that works in the NFL. I know you need to be able to run and pass, but when you're more of a runner than a passer, I just don't think it's a recipe for success in the NFL. And even though he has Devontae Smith, the Dallas Goedert, AJ Brown, I'm not going to mention their running backs because they kind of suck, to be honest. So that's another reason why I don't have much faith in them because their running game is just non-existent sometimes. It's really Jalen Hurts or bust. So just based off, because I do like their defense from their secondary to the defensive line, like I mentioned, to their linebackers, I think that's a solid group right there and might be the best defense in that division. But just at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, there's no way I'm trusting Jalen Hurts in the biggest moments to make the pass to win you the game.
All right. Let's move on over to the AFC East, fellas. All right, let's get this out of the way. I don't want people to think that because I'm putting them last, that I am not bullish on them, because I am. And I'm not saying that from a biased standpoint, because I love their offseason. I'm going to put the Jets here for now.
I'm shocked.
No, because, well, and look, I'm not high on what the Patriots did this offseason, man. I feel like the Jets could be a good Cinderella team. But again, it's a believe it to see it scenario. But I gotta say this: one of the better off seasons of an NFL team, and I think the Jets could be one of the big surprises of this offseason. But just for now, because reputation precedes them, we'll put them. Let's talk about them first. Okay, so Zach Wilson, year 2. Me and Dame, being both Jets fans, we have high expectations for him. We think he'll make that leap. Jurg, I think, obviously you're not as high as we are, which makes sense because you're not a Jets fan, but I do think I do believe that you believe that there's talent there.
I've become a big fan of him this offseason.
Oh, for reasons we can't discuss, but that's another podcast. But look, they had an A+ draft in my opinion. One of, if not the best draft. They drafted Sauce Gardner, so they finally found their cornerback 1. They drafted Garrett Wilson, wide receiver, give Zach some weapons, and they drafted Jermaine Johnson, so they get their pass rusher, which they desperately needed. They also drafted Breece Hall, which is, I believe he was touted as like the number 1 running back in the draft this year. So they got weapons, man, and they filled in every position of need. They signed CJ Uzoma, and they also signed Tyler Conklin. Off the bat, their tight end position, the Jets they have weapons finally. My God, they finally have weapons. And they re-signed Braxton Berrios. Very good chemistry with Zach Wilson. They signed DJ Reed. They also signed Laken Tomlinson. Carl Lawson comes back. And just recently, just before we started recording, they signed Dwayne Brown, which also leads us to the news that Mekhi Becton will likely be out the whole season. So, a lot of goods here. A lot of goods. They finally have weapons. Zach Wilson, they give him some much needed help. It's not just going to be Corey Davis at the wide receiver position. Like, you have Garrett Wilson, you have Corey Davis, you have Elijah Moore, Denzel Mims is out there as well. So, and then they beef up their tight end depth chart, and that I think their cornerback depth is phenomenal. Well, I think their cornerback depth is great. So, a lot of goods here, a lot of goods from the Jets. I do think their offensive line with Becton out was going to be pretty bad. Well, you get Dwayne Brown as a consolation prize. So again, I think the O line there is still a tad bit concerning. I think the Dwayne Brown signing helped a lot, actually. But yeah, I think it's kind of the same scenario of like the Eagles. I'm not saying ceiling wise, but I'm saying they go as far as where Zach Wilson takes them. And, you know, if the expectations are what we, you know, if he performs like we think he can perform, then I do think the Jets have a good shot of being maybe like a 6 or 7 win team here. You know, it sucks that the Bills are in their division, so that's 2 L's. But look, I think everyone else in this division, and I know the Dolphins got better, but beatable. I do think they're beatable, and the Jets don't have like the worst schedule. It's a pretty rough start, I'll say that, but I do think. I mean, look, week 2 against the Browns got a lot easier for them, but I think they can make some noise. I think they can make some noise. Oh yeah, Jerk. Jets. Thoughts?
Ooh, the Jets, the New York Jets, Jets. I'm being real for Chris because I know people are gonna accuse you and Dame of bias on this. I'll say it for you guys. I know we're going in this order, but myself personally, I don't have the Jets as the 4th place team in this division. I have them as my 3rd place personally.
Oh man.
Yeah. But we're not gonna talk about the other team just yet. Yeah, the Jets. I think they made and he's been a character on discussed here, quite a few times, Joe Douglas, and someone's going to talk about it in a bit. We know Dame versus Joe Douglas has been a very much of a up and down relationship in terms of what has happened ever since this podcast has started. But I really do like a lot of the moves that Joe Douglas made to just surround Zach Wilson and to just make it a better situation here. Even on the fly, just with the most recent move of getting Dwayne Brown for Mekhi Becton, that being out, like that's a pretty good veteran move right there for him to make. But looking at the rest of this roster, I think the running back crew now, like you said, with Breece Hall and Michael Carter being there, as long with the veteran in Tevin Coleman, I think there's options there for Robert Saleh and the younger LaFleur brother, Mike LaFleur, to be able to play around with. You have a wide receiving core that you have Braxton Berrios there for the slot. You have Corey Davis there as the big body guy. You have a Denzel Mims who you hope can make it work. But even if not, you still have Elijah Moore. And you have Garrett Wilson. Like, you have depth. And even same with the tight end spot. You have CJ Uzoma, who was really a great receiving threat. And then you have Tyler Conklin, who could do a little bit of both in terms of catch the ball, but also be a good blocker. Even the nice story of Jeremy Rutger, who I think he grew up being a Jets fan, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I know he lives in the Long Island area.
Yeah, you have that. I think the offensive line, now that you have Dwayne Brown there, I think it should be more sturdy. They did sign Laken Tomlinson this past offseason, which was a great move. You have Elijah Vera Tucker from last year. Underrated move, too, by the way, from this past draft, which he's probably not going to get to play a lot. But if he gets a chance to, Max Mitchell, who they got out of Louisiana Lafayette, he was a gem for myself personally throughout the scouting process for the draft.
Hearing good things about him, I heard he's a project, though.
Oh, no, he's certainly a project, but I think for he's more of a long-term piece.
Yeah.
But that was still he's the perfect developmental offensive lineman for this team right now because they have pieces in place. So I think overall they did a really good job alongside the offense. The defense, they also did make those additions, like you mentioned, Sauce Gardner and Jermaine Johnson being two just absurd. The fact that they got both those guys was absolutely outstanding. To go along a defensive line of having a couple veterans back, you hope John Franklin Myers can maybe have a really good year here potentially because he had 6 sacks last season. The linebacking core, I think CJ Mosley finally being healthy last year for the first time in his Jets career, I think would be big. And then you have the rest of this defensive back group. There's a lot of potential with this team, but ultimately, like you guys said, and kind of what we made the point of when it comes to like the NFC East, I think it's a thing to talk about here in the AFC East. It comes down to the quarterback and how confident are you in the quarterback? And I think Zach Wilson, this has to be, and I think he will, but this definitely has to be a year where he makes significant improvements. I think Zach Wilson has the talent. I think there was a reason why he was drafted that high. He can throw on the run. He's got a pretty good arm. I think his arm did get better this past offseason. I think he'll be a little bit more accurate. I think year 2, I always hate the idea that we need to make year 2 the year for quarterbacks and head coaching tandems because I think it takes a little bit more time than that. I think, and even last year, I think there was still a little bit of suffering for the preseason and training camp process because of things. I think this was the first full proper training camp and offseason that the Jets got to have with Zach Wilson. So I think that's going to aid them. I think him and Mike LaFleur in year 2 can maybe make a couple more plays happen. I've said this to my other compatriots who are Jets fans on another podcast that I do, that if you're not going to be a playoff team, what you have to do is you have to player watch. Now, on the NFL, it's different because you got a lot of players to watch. But I think with Zach Wilson, it's the little things of if you're down by 17 in the fourth quarter, how much are you going to lose the game by? Can Zach Wilson pull off a drive or 2 in the fourth quarter? End of the first half, your defense let up a score with 2 minutes left. Can he run the 2-minute drill? Can he pull off the passes he wasn't making last year? Can he hit those pinpoint precision passes? Can they be more efficient in the red zone, get more touchdowns than field goals? smarter play calls, all those important things. I think you want to see those improvements out of Zach Wilson, and I think you will see some of that to an extent. Is there still a learning curve? Of course, because I think Zach Wilson was a little bit late of a college product in terms of him becoming a first round caliber pick. So I think there's still more learning to do, but I think Zach Wilson's going to have a pretty good rookie season for the most part. Is he still going to make mistakes? Yes. But
Sophomore season.
oh, my bad. Sophomore
It's all
season.
good.
I meant improvements from his rookie season now to
Yeah, yeah,
sophomore year. Like I think, yeah. And once again, I became a fan of him this past offseason for off the field adventures. But I think I think there's hope for the Jets this year that you're going to see improvements, and Zach Wilson is going to be at the forefront of that. Most importantly, I think that's going to be the ultimate for the success of this season is not going to be the win-loss count, although you would like it to be better than last year. It's going to be how did Zach Wilson perform. That's my number one thing personally for the Jets going into next year. And again, myself personally, I have them third in the division.
Yeah, 100% agree that I think it's going to come down to Zach Wilson and how good he's going to be and the steps he takes moving forward. Because I loved what they did this offseason from free agency to the draft. You got your number one corner, something that you could argue was the Jets' weakest position group last year. Then you got your number one receiver, Zach Wilson, that you can pair him with Elijah Moore. You already have Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, Braxton Berrios, a guy who may not be a hot name out in around the NFL, but he's a guy who has a really good connection with Zach Wilson. So you kind of set your receiver group. Then you went on free agency. You got another corner in DJ Reed that you could pair with Sauce Gardner, and you already had Bryce Hall, who was pretty good as well last season. And you have a couple other slot corners who are really well. So you improved two position groups which are probably your weakest last year. And then obviously getting Brees Hall was a move that kind of surprised me, which I didn't expect, but I completely understood because going into year two, I know Jerk mentioned the kind of make or break year, but I also don't agree with that it is. But one way or another, you have to give your quarterback the best possible weapons you can, so you really see how good he is. You, like I said, added Garrett Wilson and adding Brees Hall to running back crew who already has Michael Carter. You have Tevin Coleman as well. Putting a guy as explosive as that in that kind of offense that's came from the San Francisco kind of scheme, which they use a bunch of different running backs that are super explosive, is not only going to be great for the offense in general, but it's going to make Zach Wilson a lot more comfortable because he's going to know he can hand it off and they'll get 5 or 6 yards that will make it easier for him to convert third downs and make a lot easier throws and be a lot more comfortable. And when you have a running game, your offensive line gets better as well because the pass rush can't fully bull rush because they don't know if it's going to be a run or pass. So as long as your running game is good, it helps your offensive line play as well, and that's can protect the quarterback. But at the end of the day, I just think the team is still really young on the offensive side and the defensive side. And that's why I probably still have them last. But however, from 2 to 4 in this division, I think it's going to be extremely close. I don't think it's going to be a landslide from anywhere. I think
yeah.
from whoever have at 2 to whoever have at 4, I think it could be separated by honestly like 2 games. And I wouldn't be surprised if anything changes from 2 to 4. But just because of the fact that I think the Jets are maybe the youngest team out of everybody else besides the Bills, I think that's why I have them last in the division. Well, I love what they did this offseason.
Yeah. Yeah. Just trending upward. Looking good. Looking good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the Patriots because I think that's where everyone's head is at. I think that's who Jerk has at 4. I'm just predicting here. Yeah, what did the Patriots do this offseason besides trading N'Keal Harry?
They
They
overdrafted a
added.
center.
I don't know who the hell they drafted, but they added Devontae Parker as a receiver. Guess that's about it.
So what's the ceiling here for the Pats? Because I don't know. I'm gonna let you guys
I
take
think
it.
the ceiling is third place, like
Yeah, no,
exactly where.
I don't see them finishing second or first, obviously, but
Mhm.
I don't like what weapons do they have for Mac Jones?
I think we're being
Devontae
really
Parker.
generous calling some of these guys weapons. I'll just say that. I
Yeah.
think we're
I don't even
being
know.
really
That's what I'm
generous.
asking. I'm like, who are the
I
weapons
think
for
Bill
Mac Jones?
Belichick is relying on his
Defense.
wisdom and I
Oh.
guess his how good he is as a coach way too much because I'll just go into the Patriots thing for myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where they're relying a lot on Mac Jones. I know he had a pretty good first year, but I think a lot of that had to do with how good that defense was and how good that running game was. Do I think that defense or running game can repeat what they did and make it as comfortable from Mac Jones as it was last year. I don't know. That's to be determined. Mac Jones is the kind of quarterback, in my opinion, that you need to surround him with the best possible talent in order for him to be successful, because it's clear and obvious. You saw Alabama where he had first rounders on the offensive line, multiple first round picks, wide receiver. Obviously at running back, he had multiple first round picks. So he's the kind of guy who can win you games, but he needs to be in the perfect situation in order to do that. I don't think he's a guy that can go out and win you games by himself. He's not gonna go out and score, throw for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns in a game, and just outshoot somebody else. That's just not gonna happen. So I think the Patriots had a very lackluster offseason, and I don't think they really added to what they needed to. I think they're, whether it's Bill Belichick running it or someone else running it, I just think they're relying on the brilliance and greatness of Bill Belichick to kind of ride the ship here and hope that Mac Jones turns into someone that many people don't think he is. So I don't like what they did. I think their ceiling is third place. They could easily be last. Hope they are last because I'm sick and tired of them. They need to be humbled. But I definitely think their ceiling is third place, and I don't think they could be better than that.
Out of respect to William Belichick, of course. Respect to William.
Respect to William.
Sir William.
Look, yeah, the Patriots are my fourth place team in this division. For myself personally.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love it.
And they're probably gonna make me eat my words knowing all this. But they didn't get better this offseason. They just didn't get better. And that, like, you can't, I've said this about so many teams, and because this team doesn't have Tom Brady anymore, I can also say this about this team now and not eat you know what for it. But like the when you have a rookie quarterback perform well, above expectations, let's say, like Dame said, it's the perfect situation around him in multiple facets of the game. It's the offense and the defense. How did the offense get better? They didn't. There was no real significant additions. Devontae Parker, people are still waiting for Devontae Parker to finally prove that he's the number one wide receiver. He was a first-round pick at wide receiver. A lot of people forget that. He was a first-round pick. And time after time, disappointment after disappointment, he continued to disappoint in Miami. I do not see a single difference. Wide receivers don't go to the New England Patriots to become Pro Bowlers. They go there ready-made. And this is not a guy who's ready-made to be a bona fide number one on this team. He's going to be their number one, but that doesn't mean he is a number one. Just because you're the number one wide receiver on a team doesn't mean you'd be the number one wide receiver on every single team. Or in certain other wide receivers' cases, they think they're the number one wide receiver or a top three receiver in the league when they're not even a top three receiver on their own team. So, like, I don't understand the mindset of it. Again, the receiving core, like this is not a perfect receiving core. This is not a receiving core that is going to lift Mac Jones up. This is a receiving core that is going to have to rely on Mac Jones to have really made super significant strides. And I see a sophomore slump from him. I think the league is going to figure it out. And I think like the whole little Mac Jones and him doing the little gritty and all that BS.
Horrible gritty, by the way.
Yeah, dog shit. But like like he's going to be figured out and this team is going to be exposed. I think the strongest position they have on offense is the tight end group, not even the offensive line anymore, because they've taken some hits along the offensive line the last couple of years, including randomly trading Shaq Mason away that we discussed last week. An amazing deal for Bucks. A what the heck are you doing type of deal for the Patriots. Like the only I almost said wide receiver, the only offensive lineman I like on this team is Isaiah Wynn. And even then, I'm really starting to, my support of Isaiah Wynn is really starting to falter because, dang, I mean, okay, they still have David Andrews, actually. I almost forgot about that. So I like 2 of the 5 offensive line spots. The rest I'm kind of about. And again, they overdrafted Cole Strange. Then you look at the defense, again, like, yes, guys are going to progress from last season. Like Christian Barmore is going to probably have more of a role on this team. Maybe Anthony Jennings. The player I was forgetting about earlier, actually, was Jabril Peppers. He is now on the Patriots, he's the one that left the Giants I was thinking of earlier. Like, okay, like Jabril Peppers is good. He's fine, but he's not outstanding. Your defensive back crew is good. It's fine, but it's not outstanding. Like, you got Malcolm Butler back. Why? I think it's been proven the last couple of years he's barely an NFL caliber corner anymore. Like, it just, I don't understand how this team didn't get better and we're still giving them the same respect. Look, I love Bill Belichick. I was against the whole idea of people questioning his coaching ability after when Brady left, because I think he's an amazing coach. But this needs to be the last season where he has he's the GM / executive, whatever his quote unquote title is. He cannot be the main football person anymore. He cannot be the main person with free agency. He cannot be the main person with draft picks anymore. He just can't. Like, it's proven this was I don't care if these guys end up being all decent. And Pierre Strong Jr. actually, he's a guy I actually think will be a decent running back. But irregardless, this is not the same Patriots team anymore that you need to fear because Tom Brady's not there. And Mac Jones, you are not Tom Brady. You are a child in Tom Brady pajamas compared to Tom Brady. Like it's not even close. The Patriots are, for me, my fourth place team in this division. And I know Dame was kind of giving it like 2 through 4. No, I think the Patriots are going to be like a 5-6 win team, and I think the Jets would be like an 8 win team. I don't see it from the Pats this year.
Oh, from your lips to God's ears, Jurg. I
I
hope so.
I can't wait to be proven wrong, and everyone's just going to dunk on me. And this will, for the first time, this a clip from the show will be shared on Freezing Cold Takes. But
Nah, man. I think I had the same mindset as you, but it's just like I got to see it with the Jets, you know. But I hope it happens. I hope it happens. All right, let's move on over to the Dolphins. I think we're all in consensus what our next two are. Look, we have the Bills at number 1, all of us, and then we have Dolphins at number 2. Dolphins have had a very eventful offseason, fellas. They hired Mike McDaniel as head coach. I actually like that signing a lot. They took him for offensive coordinator for the 49ers, I believe. They signed Tyreek Hill. They also signed Teron Armstead. They re-signed Xavier Howard. They signed Melvin Ingram. They signed Sony Michel. They signed Chase Edmonds. Guys, this is a lot of moves here. A lot of moves. And I think they have a very good O-line. They have pretty good defense. They have some running back depth now. Waddle and Hill is going to be a nightmare for cornerbacks because that is going to be, I think, the fastest wide receiver duo in the league. My God, I feel so bad because Sauce Gardner is going to have his work cut out for him in those 2 games against the Dolphins. But, Jesus, bro. Yeah, I like... And I like I said, I like Mike McDaniel because I saw what he did with the 49ers. So I am relatively bullish on the Dolphins. I think they could be a playoff team. However, the one thing that's holding them back is arguably the most important position, which is the quarterback position. I'm not high on Tua. I'm not writing him off completely, but again, it's the same scenario as the Jets. It's the same scenario as the Eagles. You go as far as where Tua takes you. And I don't think he's going to take him that far. So, look, I think Tyreek Hill could gas him up all he wants. I think we're not idiots. We know what Tua's ceiling is. I think this is Jerk, like you said, man. It's Tua's second year or is his third year?
this is his third year, but it's his first year with this new coaching staff.
Right. So it's just, I don't know. I think the timeline always speeds up when when a team acquires a lot of weapons and makes a lot of positive changes to their roster. I think Mike McDaniel is going to be smart. They all know that Tua obviously isn't an ideal quarterback for their weapons, but I think Mike McDaniel is smart and I think he's gonna hide Tua's weaknesses by orchestrating some 5 to 10 yard field goal passes to a Tyreek Hill or a Jalen Waddle, and then it's gonna be yards after catch type of plays there, which Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are capable of. So he's gonna make him look good. And I think exactly he's gonna hide the weaknesses. He's gonna accentuate the strengths and hide the weaknesses because you have 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL on your team. You don't need Tua to beam it as much as Mahomes did to Tyreek Hill in Kansas City. So, and I think Mike McDaniel's smart like that. I think he's going to use a lot of the tactics he used in San Francisco, particularly with Deebo Samuel, and he's going to incorporate that with his weapons here in Miami. But they go as far as where Tua takes him. I don't know how far that'll be. I'm not optimistic as to how far it'll be, but I do think because of how many weapons they have and because of their improved offensive line, it could be a scary team. It could be a scary team. And I think they're a solidified number 2 in this division. Dan, let me start with you. What do you got for the Dolphins here?
So yeah, obviously you mentioned their big offseason move was trading for Tyreek Hill, something that really hurt us Jets fans because we thought, wow, we're actually in the running for a superstar kind of player. No, we didn't get him, and obviously him going to a division rival kind of hurts it more. But Mike McDaniels, I also really like the signing. Anyone that's coming from a San Francisco or a Rams, you're just gonna like that kind of hire because their offenses are so smooth and everybody works in it. So I really like their offseason. I also agree that they're pretty much solidified as the second best team in the division. I don't think the Jets or the Patriots are as talented as this team is, but like you mentioned, it's all going to come down to Tua. And I like Tua. I'm an Alabama guy. I like Tua, but I just think he has his limitations. I don't think he has the greatest arm. I don't think he's the most accurate, contrary to Tyreek Hill's beliefs. He's not the most accurate quarterback in the league. But he when you put like guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill around him, Mike Gesicki, Chase Edmonds in the backfield, forgot well they signed and traded for a bunch of different kind of running backs that can do a bunch of different things. So they put the right kind of pieces around him in order to be successful, and I think they will be because like it's kind of similar to Mac Jones. Like you need to put the best possible weapons around him for in order to be successful, and they did. They're gonna get the ball out of his hands real quick. They're not gonna make him go through four different reads. They're gonna get the ball out quick. They're gonna get it to their playmakers like Chase Edmonds, Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill in space, and that's what they do best. They work best in space, and they're gonna make plays out of it. Like Chris mentioned, from Tyreek Hill to Jalen Waddle, they're probably the two fastest running backs in the wide receivers in the entire NFL. And when you get the ball to them, they're gonna make things happen. And their defense is pretty good as well. It's not a bad defense. They have a pretty good secondary with Xavier Howard, Byron Jones. I'm forgetting who else they got on that defense, but they have a bunch of guys on that defense that can make plays for them and be consistent. So as long as Tua isn't losing them games, I think they're going to win a bunch of games and they're going to be a pretty dangerous team throughout the season for teams.
Yeah, no, like if you want to talk about a team that improved the most in any division, I think the Dolphins are arguably up there in terms of that, just off of Tyreek Hill alone and the impact he's going to bring. You can't deny it. Even past the two of them, you even have a Wilson Jr. who you brought over from the Cowboys. I think you still have one of the speedsters that you had from like the roster previous season or two ago. I'm just like the names escaping me. Like this offense is built for speed and versatility, which like you mentioned, Dame, like one thing that Mike McDaniel's trying to do with the running back core is have that ability to just like the running back where he's going to make it better. And if the Shanahan coaching tree continues, then the Dolphins running game is going to get a big boost, which they haven't had the last two seasons. Like, let's be real, the running game, like a couple of years ago, Ryan Fitzpatrick was the leading rusher on this team. Like, it's not good. It is vast improvements. The offensive line, I think, with Teron Armstead, it's interesting because he's like naturally a left tackle, which is normally the blind side, but Tua being a left-handed quarterback, it's different. I don't know. I forget if they said that they're going to have Armstead be the right tackle, or if he's just going to be the left tackle and just there for extra protection. But even still, that offensive line really underperformed to what even people's lower expectations were last season. I think if the Dolphins are going to find a lot of success, they need that offensive line to step up. They like no more excuses for those young guys. You can only be young for so long before it's like, all right, we need you to step up. Like we talk about Tua needing to step up, that offensive line as a whole, for the most part, needs to step up. And the defense, kind of like you said, like the defensive back row on this team is strong. Like it is, there's talent. You could argue it's the best all-around defensive back crew in the league. It's definitely up there, I think, in the top 10 just based off the corners alone. But you have a young guy who I hope he gets more burn this year, in Javon Holland, who they got from Oregon last year. I was a big fan of him in the draft process. I hope for like a big-time season from him. I think the rest of the defense, to me, like it's tough because the defense was the strong suit of Brian Flores' teams. And with him gone, is that going to continue? Like, to me, the defense is certainly a wait and see on this team, but we know what the main story is. Can Tua be the guy? And I will say this, like you said, Chris, things get accelerated when it comes to getting new weapons. I feel for Tua here because this is his third season. This is going to be his fourth different offensive coordinator that he's getting, because he had Chan Gailey in his rookie year. Oh dear God! And then last season they didn't just have one; they had two different guys trying to be offensive coordinator for Brian Flores. That was a terrible thing. Tua was set up to fail in Brian Flores' time there. Let's just be real here. So this is his first real season of finally getting some stability, we hope. And now, but it's also the year where it's like, hey, if you don't show us something, you're done. So that really accelerates things. They deserve to be second in the division because they were 2 years ago. They were a couple fluke victories and that random start to the season where they were like 1-7, then they had that 7-game winning streak or whatever the case was. Like I think consistency wise, like they could have been better last season. They should have been the second best team last year, but that was the Patriots. I think at the end of the day, this all comes down to what can Mike McDaniel make Tua become. If he can make Tua become the guy that a lot of us, myself included, expected from him coming out of college, I think the Dolphins are going to be a force to be reckoned with potentially, especially with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle there. But it's a wait and see game when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. But I will say this, and I think the Dolphins fans would agree: most relevant this franchise has been to start a season in 2 decades.
They did lose their pick. They did lose their pick next year. But yeah, Jerk, they started off the season like bad, and then they just like caught fire towards the end. Because I had the Dolphins as like a sleeper, sneaky playoff team last season, but
Yeah, we
I
all
didn't
did.
I
They
didn't know
they
what
were
was going on behind the
still
scenes.
they were still a game away from the playoffs. I have to remember, like the last
Yeah,
week of last season, it was the whole Chargers Raiders things. It was the Steelers. I think the Dolphins may have had a shot, but they would have needed like everyone to lose or whatever the case was. Like they still had a chance up until the last 2 weeks of the season, despite how things went. And I think part of that, and this is why, like I feel for Brian Flores, but part of me also looks at it like, dude, you made a lot of poor decisions when it came to Tua. Like this cannot be denied. Even if Brian Flores did get screwed over from that coaching job, which he did, he also did not do himself any favors when it came to trying to make Tua the best he could be. Like both can be true, and that's important. And I think McDaniel is going to be able to make that difference here. I think McDaniel is going to be better for Tua than I think he's the best possible coach. Like Dame talked about it for. I forget which coaching hire he mentioned earlier in the episode, but I think if you want to talk about in terms of fit for a roster, I think this was the best coaching hire in terms of offensive mind to offensive needed team by far from the offseason.
yeah. But let's move on to the Buffalo Bills, guys. I think we're on consensus here. This is a Super Bowl contender, an AFC favorite, not just AFC East, but the AFC favorite. You know, Josh Allen is Josh Allen, superstar quarterback. I think their most notable offseason move was that they signed Von Miller, so their defense just got a lot better. Um, yeah, fellas, I mean, we know that they're the overwhelming favorite for the AFC East this season. It's gonna be them, but I mean, I guess expectations. Well, let's talk about this from like our expectations of them in general, not just the AFC East. Just like we all have them as Super Bowl contenders. But granted, it is a very tough AFC this year. And look, they still need to beat the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill, but they still need to beat them. You also have the rest of the AFC West. I guess let's talk about the Bills in a way in which like how do we think they fare in a beefed up AFC in the AFC conference in general? Is it theirs to lose this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Whatever comments, concerns. What do you guys think? Anyone could we can make this a
Well,
free discussion
I
because
think
like
it just comes down to Josh Allen's consistency because although the last memory everyone has of him is last year's not AFC Championship, but it should have been the AFC Championship, but it was the Chiefs and Bills when they went to overtime. That magical game him and Patrick Mahomes had against each other. That's the last thing people remember. But if you've watched him for the past 2 years and followed him, like every single season is an up and down. Like you just don't know which Josh Allen you're gonna get game after game. I forgot which team they like either barely beat or beat. Like they had nine. I think it was the Jags or something like that where
They lost 9-6. Oh my
they
god.
lost 9-6.
I
Where
was it
remember
the
that.
Steelers?
was the defensive Josh Allen had a better game than the quarterback Josh
I
Allen.
think it
Like
was Steelers.
No,
Or
no,
may-
no, no.
Jaguars.
The 9-6 game was the Jaguars game.
they
Yeah,
lost to the
like,
Jaguars.
but like
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. Like you just never know which Josh Allen you're gonna get, and people this all season have tend to forget like that he is such an up and down quarterback. You really never know what you're gonna get from him, and that's why you can't really annoy him as the best quarterback in the league, even though he has those kind of physical traits where he can be the best quarterback in the league. But I think at the end of the day, it will come down to how consistent he can be. Because if he can be consistent throughout, they'll have a first round bye. The playoffs will go through Buffalo and all that kind of stuff, and they'll have that kind of advantage. But if he's going to be inconsistent and stuff, you just don't know what you're going to get in the regular season. Then, especially in the playoffs, he could have one of those stinker games where he's just not himself in the first round of the playoffs, and they could get booted before they even see a team like the Chiefs later on. So I think this team from top to bottom, from offense to defense to head coach to all that kind of stuff, I think they're prime to be the best, be the favorite in the entire league to win the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to Josh Allen consistency because he hasn't been able to prove himself to be consistent throughout an entire season and playoffs.
Yeah, so I think there are a couple more aspects, but a big thing will be Josh Allen and his consistency. Remember last season when he signed the contract, a lot of people harped on him the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season, a lot of people were criticizing him, saying that the Bills, it was bad for them to sign the contract when they did because he wasn't playing well. Turns out it was actually the smart move because considering some of the quarterbacks we've seen sign, especially Kyler Murray, they probably made that signing at the right time. But no, there was a lot of criticism early last season, and Dame brings up a good point. Like there were times where it just looked really bad, and I think it'll be interesting to see how much the loss of Brian Daboll affects them offensively. I think it'll be interesting to see what Josh Allen can do for the full season without Brian Daboll, without one of the key guys who played a big role in him improving. Because, like I said before, if you watch Josh Allen in his rookie season and you watch this current quarterback, you would not be convinced this is the same dude. Because let's be real here, it is not the same guy that came in. He's learned a lot and he got a lot better. But at the end of the day, this suffices to say, they should be the AFC favorites. The Chiefs did get worse. Yes, I know the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. So I'm not going to doubt Patrick Mahomes. Like, we'll wait till we get to the playoffs. But there's a reason I picked the Chiefs to win every single game last season for a reason when we did our weekly predictions. Because, dear Lord. But the Chiefs got worse. The Broncos and Raiders, yes, they got better on paper, but we still need to see that play out. And one of those AFC West teams is going to get cannibalized in that division, is probably going to miss the playoffs. The Chargers are a lot better. The Chargers, to a lot of people, are the favorite to win the AFC West because they made so many additions, yes. The AFC North, whether it's the Bengals or the Ravens, I think the Bills are better than those teams. In the AFC South, it's not even close. So the AFC is the Bills to lose. They need home field advantage. I know in football you can lose as the first seed. Once again, from someone who took great delight in the Titans losing last year, who picked against them last year. Like, I understand it's not a guarantee, but I think the thing for the Bills' best case scenario is that they get the division, of course, get the top seed in the AFC, have home field advantage throughout the entirety of the playoffs, because Buffalo is not an easy place to play. I think you go from there. I really, really do think that it is a big deal for the Bills this season. Because I think in the AFC, you still have, like, I think the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders, this is going to be a year where they need to work those things out. The Chiefs, you have to see if they're going to take a step back this season. In the NFC, the Bucks are weaker. The Packers are weaker. This is your window. This is a full one season. If we just take one season, put them in a vacuum, this is your season to win or lose the Super Bowl. It is all on you, Buffalo. This is the time you've been waiting for. This is your shot. This is your opportunity. And I'm not even trying to be hyper exaggerating here. You may not get this again because the NFC, there's going to be another offseason next year, and you assume the Packers and Buccaneers will improve. The Rams are going to be the defending Super Bowl champions right now. Okay, they're your toughest competition. What are they going to be in a year? You have the rest of the AFC that I just went through. They're going to get an offseason to improve based off of what this next season will be. The AFC, at least, is theirs to lose. And if they don't face the Rams in the Super Bowl is theirs to lose. Super Bowl or bust. I cannot make it more basic than that. This is your 1 year window. Definitively, you could be the best team in the league, bar none. This is your championship to lose, Buffalo.
Okay. Let's close it out with this question. Besides the Chiefs, who in the AFC, not the NFC, who in the AFC gives them the most comp?
The Bills?
Yeah. I think we'll go one by one. We could each say like one or two teams. Let's not make it OP and make it three. Like for me, for example, I'll go besides the Chiefs.
I'm going the Ravens before you steal my answer.
No, I'd go with. I'm gonna go Colts and Chargers. That's
Damn.
me.
I'm gonna go with the Ravens because I don't know.
If healthy.
Well, yeah, obviously healthy, but I just think the offseason they had was probably arguably the best compared to right next to the Jets, and then just the difference is that the Ravens were already such a good team, and to have a kind of offseason that they had, I think is gonna take them over the top, maybe to the next level, and I think you're gonna see Lamar Jackson his first AFC Championship game this season. I just think from his style, I think that's going to be hard for the Bills to stop as well. And just a secondary that the Ravens assembled this offseason to adding to already what they had. I think that's something that can give Josh Allen a lot of troubles, and having Harbaugh as a head coach, I think he's going to know exactly what to do, exactly how to bring out the bad Josh Allen. And I think just from offense to defense, I think they're going to give the Bills a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Dang, you guys really, I think you took the top three answers, because I think part of the reason that the Bills can be defeated is the running defense. That's how the Colts almost beat them 2 years ago. And I think the Chargers have the explosiveness that the Chiefs had last season to outduel them. I think you either need to outduel them in the air or just beat them on the ground.
Let's go Broncos then.
Okay. I think I mean, if I had more faith in the rest of the team, I would pick the Tennessee Titans because Derrick Henry just torches Buffalo every single time. But if you think I'm taking Ryan Tannehill over anybody else in the playoffs, you are walling. I'm just gonna go. Look, I'm apparently the only person that's gonna give them the proper love, so I'll put the Bengals up there.
What?
I think there's a confidence in being able in knowing that you've gotten past the point and that you could get back there. And also, like we talk about matching up for a team receiving wise, the wide receiver depth goes to the Bengals in that
Yeah,
matchup.
yeah.
It's Jamar Chase, it's Tyler Boyd, and it's T. Higgins. The number 3 receiver on that team is better than the number 2 in Buffalo. And
Who is the number 2 in Buffalo? Is it Davis?
that's my point. That's my point. Like, yes, we have faith in Gabriel Davis, but he's not the definitive number 2 right now. He's the projected number 2. And this might be a little bit of a hot take, but the better number 1 receiver is also on the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm just saying. So if you want to talk about a team that could throw with them, that could go throw for throw, yes, the Bengals can go throw for throw with the Bills to me in a playoff game. So I got you back, Cincinnati. I may have had to do a Joe Burrow project for work. That's probably part of the reason, but I got you back, Cincinnati. Don't worry, Bengals fans. I'm with you.
Dame, do you hear that? Jurg would choose Jamar Chase over Stephon Diggs in
Yeah,
fantasy.
I think that's blasphemous. No, I don't. All right, fantasy is different. I would take Jamar Chase too, but when it comes to real life,
You
I
said
think-
blasphemous?
I'm not a fantasy expert. I never claimed that.
Yo, but blasphemous?
I think in real life is blasphemous. I just think Stephon Diggs, just his route running and the way he gets separation and his hands are just absolutely ridiculous. I think a lot of Jamar Chase's stats last year was a lot of this flashy stuff that he kind of got away from a defender that fell, or where they just had really bad coverage where he just blew by guys for a 70-yard touchdown. And a lot of his stats are kind of inflated that way. But if those for one game only, a wide receiver that I needed to make my quarterback's life easier, I think I just go Stephon Diggs easy because of the way he runs routes and the way he catches the balls. His hands are incredible.
Okay. That'll do it for this week. Yeah, what a stacked episode. Yeah, so we're going to cap it off with the West next week, AFC and NFC West. It'll be the finale of our division series. Jurg, where can they find us on the socials?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, while we head to the Wild West next week, make sure that in between that time, you head to the Somewhat Sports page on Instagram. It's somewhat.sports. Make sure you follow us there. And, of course, find the Somewhat Space and Sports podcast on both YouTube and Spotify. Get used to a lot more episodes like this very soon here because we are going to have a lot of football-centric episodes because the season is coming up. I mean, preseason might take a little bit of time because, let's be real, it's just preseason. But, hey, we're going to have a lot of fun once the football season starts. I'm assuming we're going to do our weekly week-by-week records once again like we did last year. I kind of forgot who won that last year, so I don't know. But, you know, that's going to be a fun thing to keep track on a weekly basis on the IG page. And yeah, like I said last week, this is the best sports podcast coming out there. The summer of 2022 is sadly coming to a close, which it sucks for all of us, myself included, because I just clocked in and clocked out the entire time. But this podcast, it goes past the summer, past this year, to infinity and beyond. The Somewhat Sports Podcast is the podcast for you.
Beautifully said as always, Jurg. Yeah, phenomenal job as always, fellas. You does this. Y'all does this. To all the listeners listening, if you made it this far, we appreciate you. And until next time, peace.